Right now, somewhere out past the last stoplight in rural Texas, a family is unloading boxes into a home that cost them less than a mid-sized sedan just to get standing on their land. There is no 30-year mortgage on a builder-grade box in a cookie-cutter subdivision, no 2-year waitlist, no fighting a contractor who ghosts them halfway through the job and stops answering the phone. They ordered this house, a steel-framed barn-style home shipped to their property on the back of a flatbed, every beam and panel labeled part by part like the world's most expensive piece of flat-pack furniture. And in 2026, this is not some fringe thing that a handful of off-grid preppers do out in the woods. It has quietly turned into one of the fastest growing ways to put a roof over your head anywhere in America. And the reasons behind that shift say a lot about where housing is heading. But here is the part almost nobody says out loud before you fall in love with the glossy photos and the drone shots. That advertised price, the one that sounds too good to be real, usually is. So today we are counting down 7 prefab barndominiums you can actually order this year, from the bare bones bargain shells to the fully loaded forever homes that make your neighbors slow down at the end of the driveway. And number 5 on this list? It costs less than a brand new pickup truck sitting on a dealer lot right this second. Before we go any further, if you have ever stared at your rent or your mortgage statement and quietly wondered whether there was another way to do this whole thing, do yourself a favor and tap that subscribe button right now. Every single week on this channel, we break down real housing alternatives, real numbers, and the traps buried in the fine print that quietly cost regular people thousands of dollars. Subscribe so the next breakdown finds you before you sign anything you might regret. All right, let's get into it. First, we need to be honest about what a barndominium actually is, because the internet has turned the word into a fantasy that sells a lot of dreams and burns a lot of savings. A barndominium, or barndo for short, is a barn-style metal building with a flexible living space built inside it. The real magic of steel framing is that it holds up the roof without needing load-bearing walls in the middle, so the entire interior is basically a blank canvas. You can drop bedrooms, a kitchen, and a 2-car workshop wherever you want them, and move them around on paper until the layout is perfect. That is the dream everybody is buying into. Now here is the reality that quietly separates the people who pull this off from the people who end up with a rusting shell and an empty bank account. Almost every jaw-dropping price you see online is for a kit. And a kit is not a house. A kit generally shows up in one of 3 flavors, and knowing the difference is the single most useful thing you can walk away with today. There is red iron, which is the heavy structural steel skeleton, the metal siding, and the roofing panels, and it is the cheapest option by a wide margin. Red iron usually needs cutting and welding right there on your site, so it is not exactly a casual weekend project you knock out with a cordless drill. Then there is cold-formed steel, where the panels arrive numbered and pre-drilled for your electrical and plumbing runs, and most people with genuine construction knowledge can bolt the whole thing together without a welder on speed dial. And finally, there are structural insulated panels known in the trade as SIPs, which bake the insulation directly into the walls for a tighter, quieter, more efficient home, but they carry the highest price and demand a crew that actually knows how to install them. Whichever flavor you pick, that headline kit price almost never includes 4 enormous line items. It does not include the foundation and the concrete slab. It does not include the on-site assembly and labor. It does not include running utilities, water, septic, and power to the building. And it does not include a single square foot of interior finishing, no drywall, no kitchen, no bathroom, no flooring. The shell itself might run you $20 to $50 a square foot. Turning that shell into a home you can legally and comfortably live in is where the real money hides, and it is usually the bigger half of the total. There is one more wrinkle worth knowing before you get too excited. Because barndos are still newer than traditional houses in a lot of counties, financing and appraisals can be trickier, and some lenders and local building departments will make you jump through extra hoops. None of that is a deal breaker, but going in blind is how people get hurt. And it helps to understand why this whole movement exploded in the first place, because it was not an accident. Traditional homes got expensive fast, lumber prices whipsawed builders for years, and skilled labor got harder and pricier to find in every corner of the country. At the same time, remote work untethered a huge number of people from expensive cities, and pointed them toward cheaper land out in the country. A steel barndo answers all of that at once. It goes up faster than a stick-built house. The pre-engineered parts fit together with far less waste. And once it is standing, it laughs off the pests, rot, and fire that slowly eat away at wood-framed homes for decades. That combination of speed, toughness, and lower long-run maintenance is the real engine underneath all the hype. Keep all of it in the back of your mind for every home on this list. With that groundwork laid, let's start the countdown. Number 7 is the one that breaks people's brains the first time they see the sticker price. Picture a compact 2-bedroom, somewhere around 1,200 to 1,500 square feet, wrapped in that clean, modern farmhouse silhouette everyone is chasing right now, dark trim against light panels. The red iron kit for a home this size can start at around $27,000. $27,000. That is less than a lot of people put down as a deposit on a used car. When a number like that goes viral on social media, thousands of people start dreaming out loud in the comments, and almost every one of them completely skips past the fine print. That $27,000 buys you the steel bones, the siding, and the roof over your head. It does not weld itself together, it does not pour its own slab, and it does not arrive with a kitchen, a bathroom, or so much as a single light switch. So who is this actually for? It is for the hands-on person who already owns their land free and clear, who is comfortable hiring a welder or swinging a hammer alongside one, and who understands deep down that they are buying a starting line, not a finish line. Done right with a smart DIY finish and a lot of sweat, a home like this can come together for a fraction of what any traditional build in the same county would cost. Done wrong, with no plan and no budget for the finish work, it becomes the most photogenic pile of steel in the whole state. Here's the reality check that rarely makes it into the viral posts. By the time you pour a slab, run power and water, frame and insulate the inside, and add even a basic kitchen and bathroom, that $27,000 shell can easily turn into a total closer to $100,000 or more, depending on how far you push the finishes. That is still a remarkable price for a brand new home you own outright, but it is a very different number than the one on the thumbnail. The most common mistake people make at this tier is falling in love with the shell price, buying the steel on a wave of excitement, and then discovering they never budgeted for the 90% of the project that actually makes it livable. But if that rock bottom entry price still feels a little intimidating, the next one solves the single biggest headache standing in most people's way. Number 6 is built for the buyer who loves the barndo idea, but breaks into a cold sweat at the word welding. This is a cold-formed steel kit, and it genuinely changes the game for the average person. Instead of raw structural beams that need a torch and a certified welder standing in the mud, the panels show up numbered and pre-drilled, ready to be fastened together by any crew that knows its way around ordinary house framing. A kit like this, in a comfortable 2-bedroom footprint, tends to land somewhere in the low 70s. For that money, you are typically getting the shell, the interior framing, the siding, the roofing, and very often the windows and exterior doors already included in the package. That is a serious step up from a bare red iron skeleton where you supply almost everything yourself. Companies like General Steel and the Barndo specialists over at My Barndo Plans out of Frisco, Texas, have leaned hard into this exact format, precisely because it bridges the gap between hardcore do-it-yourselfers and normal families who just want a durable home. The trade-off is sitting right there in the number. You are paying more upfront than red iron for the convenience of a system your local trades can actually understand, quote, and finish without scratching their heads. For a lot of buyers, that predictability is worth every extra dollar, because a build that stalls out is a build that quietly bleeds money. Picture the typical buyer at this tier. It is a couple in their 30s or 40s who can manage a general contractor and maybe handle some of the lighter finish work themselves on weekends, but who have no business anywhere near a welding rig. For them, cold-formed steel is the whole difference between a project that keeps moving and a project that stalls out in the mud. Because the panels arrive pre-drilled and clearly labeled, local electricians and plumbers can run their lines through the building without fighting the structure at every turn, which keeps their bids reasonable and keeps the timeline honest. Which brings us to the one a whole lot of you came here for. Number 5 is the reason many of you clicked on this video in the first place, and it absolutely earns the spot. Think of a modern farmhouse barndo in that perfect sweet spot size, roughly 2 bedrooms with room to grow into a third, in the heritage-style layout that has become the poster child for this entire movement. The red iron kit for this class of home starts right around $55,000 for the shell. Now let that number sit right next to a simple fact that should make you pause. The average price of a brand new pickup truck in America has climbed so high that $55,000 barely gets you into a mid-trim model on the lot these days. People finance that truck for 7, sometimes 8 years without blinking an eye, watch it lose value the second they drive it home, and never think twice. And here, for that very same money, you are buying the structural bones of an entire house that could outlast the person who builds it. That is the comparison that stops the scroll cold, and it is genuinely true, as long as you respect the asterisk we keep circling back to. 55,000 is the kit, and only the kit. It is not your foundation, your plumbing, your septic system, your finish work, or your labor. Realistically, by the time this home is move-in ready sitting on a proper slab with a decent interior, you are looking at a total number several times higher than the sticker. But even fully finished, a build like this routinely comes in well under what the same square footage would cost you stick-built in a subdivision full of identical houses. It hits that rare middle ground of being genuinely affordable to start and genuinely nice to actually live in. For the buyer who wants the whole barndo lifestyle without gambling their retirement on it, this is the one to circle twice. Let's put real numbers on the whole journey so the truck comparison actually means something. Say you start with that $55,000 red iron shell. Add a foundation and slab, on-site assembly, utility hookups, insulation, and a sensible mid-range interior finish. Depending on your region and how much sweat you put in yourself, you might land the finished home somewhere in the range of $150,000 to $250,000 all in. Now compare that to what a brand new home of similar quality and size costs in almost any market in the country right now, and the gap is not small. You are getting more space, tougher construction, and a floor plan you designed yourself for meaningfully less money. That is the honest, non-clickbait version of why this exact tier has quietly become the most popular one on the whole list. However, if your winters are brutal and your energy bills already keep you up at night, number 4 was engineered with you specifically in mind. Number 4 takes that same beloved farmhouse footprint and completely upgrades the guts of it. This is the structural insulated panel version, the SIP's build, and it is a different animal from a bare steel shell in every way that matters long-term. With SIPs, the insulation is engineered directly into the wall and roof panels at the factory, which means the home arrives with a tight, high-performance thermal envelope instead of you spraying foam into empty steel cavities on a ladder 6 months later. In plain terms, that means noticeably lower heating and cooling bills for as long as you own the place, fewer drafts, and a quieter interior that holds its temperature through a heat wave or a cold snap. The catch, and there is always a catch, is the price tag. A SIP's kit for a home this size can climb into the low hundreds of thousands, often 2 to 3 times the cost of the equivalent red iron shell. It also demands a crew with real specific experience because these panels are not something you casually figure out from a video on a Saturday afternoon. So this one is squarely for the long-term thinker. The person building their genuine forever home in a cold or punishing climate, who runs the math over 20 years instead of 20 days, and calmly decides that the higher upfront premium pays them back in comfort and utility savings year after year. It is the barndo for people who have zero intention of ever moving again. There is also a subtle, long-game reason this one keeps showing up on serious buyers' shortlists. A tighter building envelope does not just shave the bills, it protects the home itself. Steady interior temperatures and controlled moisture mean far less condensation forming inside the walls, and that matters a great deal in a metal structure, where trapped humidity is quietly the enemy over the years. So the SIP's premium is really buying you 2 things at the same time: lower operating costs and a building that ages more gracefully. For someone planning to hand this house down rather than flip it in 5 years, that math starts to look very different than it does to a first-time buyer chasing the lowest possible entry price. But if raw square footage matters to you more than efficiency, number 3, throws the doors wide open. Number 3 is where we stop talking about clever starter homes and start talking about real, sprawling family living. Picture a full 3-bedroom barndo somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,400 square feet, very often in that classic 40 by 60 footprint that has quietly become the industry standard for a reason. Because steel simply does not need interior support walls, that entire space is yours to carve up however your family actually lives. A wide open concept great room where everyone gathers, 3 genuine bedrooms with real closets, and still enough leftover square footage to wall off a workshop or a proper garage bay right under the same continuous roof. The red iron kit for a home like this frequently lands in the mid to high 60,000s for the shell. The names you will bump into in this category read like a lineup card: the Liberty, the Prairie, the Dove, each one a slightly different take on the same core idea of space and flexibility. This is the barndo for the growing family that is flat out tired of choosing between a house and a shop and wants both living under one roof. It is also where a lot of buyers quietly discover their true sweet spot because the jump in living space from the smaller kits is enormous while the jump in shell price is surprisingly modest. You get dramatically more house without paying for dramatically more steel. There is a quiet financial logic to this tier that the smaller kits simply cannot match. Most of the fixed costs of any barndo project, the foundation crew, the assembly labor, the utility hookups, the permitting fees, hit you no matter how big the building actually is. Spreading those same fixed costs across 2,400 square feet instead of 1,200 means your cost per square foot actually drops as the home gets bigger, at least up to a point. That is exactly why so many families who sit down and truly run the numbers end up talking themselves into more house than they first walked in planning to buy. The steel is the cheap part. The finishing is where the money goes, and a bigger footprint uses that finishing budget more efficiently. And once you have tasted that kind of elbow room, it becomes very hard not to look up the list at number 2. Quick pause here, because if you are still with me, this deep into the list, you are clearly serious about actually doing this someday. If these no-nonsense breakdowns are useful to you, take 1 second and hit that subscribe button so the next one lands in your feed automatically. Now back to the countdown, because the final 2 homes are the ones people really dream about. Number 2 is where the dream stops being purely practical and starts being aspirational in the best possible way. This is the statement build. Think of a U-shaped or sprawling ranch-style barndo, the kind with a deep wraparound porch, a central courtyard you can actually use, and a footprint big enough to swallow a couple of vehicles, and a serious hobby shop without anyone even noticing. A red iron kit for something at this scale, like the popular U-shaped designs that bigger manufacturers offer, can run north of $110,000 for the shell alone. This is no longer a downsizing move or a tight budget play. This is somebody who owns a real, meaningful piece of land and wants a home that makes a first impression from the far end of the gravel driveway. Multi-generational families in particular fall in love with this format because you can tuck a completely private wing on one side for aging parents or grown kids, put the main living quarters right in the center, and give everyone the room they need to breathe under one shared roof. It is the barndo that stops your neighbors mid-sentence and has them asking who built it. And yet, priced out per square foot, even a build this ambitious still tends to quietly undercut a comparable custom stick-built home, which is exactly why steel keeps stealing market share from traditional lumber construction month after month. Now be warned, this is also the tier where the finish-out budget can genuinely run away from you if you are not disciplined. A footprint this large means more roof, more slab, more wiring, more plumbing, and a whole lot more interior square footage to finish. It is entirely possible to buy the shell for $110,000 and then spend 3 or 4 times that amount turning it into the home living in your head. None of that makes it a bad deal, but it does mean this tier rewards careful planning and punishes impulse buying. The people who win here decide exactly what they want before the steel ever ships, and then hold the line when the temptation to upgrade every single finish starts creeping in. But we deliberately saved the crown for last. Number 1 is the fully loaded forever home, the build that shows you the absolute ceiling of what this entire movement can do when nobody is cutting corners. Picture a large, high-end barndo pushing 3,000 square feet or well beyond, with soaring vaulted ceilings, premium finishes throughout, an oversized attached shop that could hold a small business, and every modern comfort you can put a name to. The kits at this top tier, the flagship designs from the most serious manufacturers, can run from around $135,000 in red iron up to $180,000 or more in cold-formed steel. And remember, that is still just the shell before you finish a single room. Fully built and outfitted the way those beautiful listing photos show, a home like this crosses comfortably into the deep hundreds of thousands. So why on earth is it sitting at number one? Because even at the very top of the range, it quietly proves the entire point of this list better than any of the cheaper builds could. A finished barndo of this quality still routinely costs less per square foot than a comparable traditional custom home would, while handing you something a subdivision never will. Wide open space with no wasted hallway walls, structural steel that shrugs off fire and pests and decades of hard weather, a metal roof that can last 40 to 70 years, and a building that is genuinely, unmistakably yours down to the last beam. And that is the strange, almost backwards lesson waiting at the very top of the market. The more you spend on a barndo, the more clearly its core advantage shines through because the savings actually compound as the home scales upward. A high-end Steel Forever home is not really competing with a starter house. It is competing with a custom luxury build, and on that particular battlefield, it tends to win on cost, speed, and durability all at the same time. You are not buying the cheapest possible house here. You are buying the smartest expensive house on the whole road. This is the barndo for the person who ran every number twice, waited patiently for the right piece of land to come up, and finally decided to build the last house they will ever need. So there you have it. 7 prefab Barndominiums you can order in 2026, running all the way from a $27,000 shell that fits inside a used car budget up to a six-figure forever home that most people only ever see in listing photos. And through every single stop on that countdown, one stubborn theme kept coming right back to the surface. The kit is never the whole story. The advertised price gets you the bones and nothing more, and the foundation, the labor, the utilities, and the finish work are where your real budget quietly lives. Respect that hard truth from day one, walk in with your eyes open and your math done, and a barndo can honestly be the smartest housing decision you ever make in your life. Ignore it, chase the sticker price, and it becomes a very expensive lesson in reading the fine print. So here's my question for you. If you had to pick just one of these to park on your own land tomorrow, which number would it be? The bargain shell at 7, the truck money sweet spot at 5, or the fully loaded forever home at 1? Drop it down in the comments because I genuinely read them and I love seeing which one people gravitate to. The wildest answers always come from the people who already own their own land. And if this video opened your eyes to what is actually possible right now, the one on screen breaks down exactly what it costs to finish one of these, from empty shell to move-in ready, line item by line item. That is the video that quietly saves you from the most expensive mistakes people make. Go watch that one next.